Beautiful believers. Hi, welcome to the Authentic Action Podcast, where we get authentic and hopefully inspire you to take a little more creative action toward designing and living a life that you love. I'm your hostess with the most, Miss Gabrielle Angel D. Lilly, and I'm here to explore diverse stories with diverse people who are doing just that, designing and living lives they love. My guest today is a super successful entrepreneur with a career that spans over 30 years and many, many millions of dollars. He was an early innovator in the vaping world, and he's invented hundreds of multi-million-dollar products, many of which are currently highly successful on Amazon today. He's got a new book out called Billion: How I Became the Thrill Pill Cult King, which you can find on Amazon, and is an account of the story of his first highly successful product, herbal ecstasy, back in the 90s. You might have heard of it. It's a great story, and I encourage you to check it out. As I mentioned, he's an Amazon expert, innovator, author, and filmmaker, and I'm thrilled to have him on the Authentic Action Podcast today to share some of his story and enthusiasm with you. He's also got a special offer for you beautiful listeners, so do be sure and check that out. And while I'm on the topic, please do also check out our sponsor, Sleeping Dragons Company. You can find them at sleepingdragonsco.com or on Etsy or via my own website, gallilly.com. That's GALLILLY.com. I encourage you to check out the Action School, where you can find a growing number of courses and some hands-on workshops where we would love to interact with you. Without further ado, I'm thrilled to introduce Mr. Shaahin Cheyenne. Awesome, Shaahin, it's awesome to meet you. I've had a great time going down the rabbit hole of who is Shaahin in the last couple of weeks. So.
Thanks, Gabriel. Nice to be on. Is
Awesome.
It Gabrielle? Am I pronouncing it right?
It's Gabrielle or Angel, because that's easier to say, or you can call me Gabby if that suits you. I'll answer to that. I go by Angel most of the time.
Angel. Okay, sounds good. Let's go with that.
Yeah. So as I kind of laid out there on this podcast, I love to dive into personal stories. I know you're also here to tell us about your latest book, and I did dabble into your podcast as well. So if you want to talk about that, I'm happy to hear more about that. I'd like to start off with, just kick us off with a question about Billion, the book that you're here to talk about. I'd like to talk about what motivated you at the start of this story and what motivates you now, and whether or not there are, what the common threads and the different threads are as you've grown from your 15-year-old version to your current self.
Sure. Look, I came to this country as an immigrant with my family in the early 1980s. We migrated from Iran, and we arrived here with basically the clothes on our backs. And we didn't really have much more than that. We were fairly poor. My dad worked at a pizza shop, then he worked at a dry cleaners, and we managed somehow to buy a house in a upcoming area in Los Angeles. And just around us, I saw all this wealth being created, being built, being spent, but we were still fairly poor. And I was trying to understand how wealth worked. And it didn't seem like there was really a roadmap, at least not for me. And I had discovered the books of people like Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, Og Mandino, The Greatest Salesman, some of these old-timey guys. but they didn't really give me very much practical information. So by the time I reached the tender age of 15, I really decided that I wanted out. I wanted way out of what my friend Stuart Wilde would call the TikTok world, the world that happens, and the train of thought and the trajectory that the world expects of you. Didn't work out for me.
The old rat race.
The old rat race. So that's a really good way to put it, right? Like Bob Marley song, you know? Yeah, exactly right. So the rat race. So I decided that I was going to go out on my own at 15 and try to figure out how to find my fame and fortune. And I found myself in the electronic music scene via a mentor that I discovered at a community college. And as I started looking around, I started to discover that the money was being made not by the musicians, not by the club promoters, but rather by the people who were dealing in illicit substances, one in particular called ecstasy. And I did not get the memo that it was impossible. So I decided to create a version of that that was legal, that was all natural, and that I could sell and make a nice profit. And I had a girlfriend at the time who I convinced to let me make it up in her kitchen while her dad was out at work, and I'd sneak in through the back and we'd, cook up all these herbs and extracts, and I'd put them in these little balls because I didn't have the machine to make capsules in those days. And I walked into a club that night. We had a formula that worked really well. And I walked up to one of the biggest drug dealers in those days, and I said, "Hey, you should sell this." And, he looked like he was going to kill me or punch me or something. And just in that moment, I think I was at the right place at the right time. I noticed that the supply of drugs had dried up, so there wasn't very much ecstasy going around. And two people walked up to him, and he didn't have anything to sell them. And so the guy motioned to me. I handed him the little baggies that I had packed just the day before, and we were off to the races. And it went from one guy to 10 guys to 1,000 guys until I woke up one day and walked into my office. I had 200 employees. We were employing everybody in Venice Beach. Now, mind you, before this, I was sleeping in abandoned buildings in the back seat of an abandoned Lincoln Continental, where I had pasted the pages of self-help books, and I would use a flashlight because the car stopped running at some point. So I would use a flashlight to be able to read these pages late at nights, what I used to keep me up, to having a company with 200 employees and offices all over the world. And we were selling in Tower Records and Warehouse Records and Urban Outfitters and GNC, until I walked in one day and the news broke that we had made over $1 billion in profit. And I remembered in that moment thinking to myself, oh man, like, how much is $1 billion? Like, I had no idea. I had no clue, not metaphorically, but in fact, how much $1 billion actually was. And we had broken the $1 billion barrier, pre-internet, pre-social media, pre-mobile phones, pre-iPhones, pre-all that stuff. Wow. And it was a really sobering moment for me. Mind you, I was completely sober in those days. I didn't do any drugs. I was so busy making money. And from there, it was a wild ride. And, I write about it. You mentioned my book, so I can bring that up. The book is out now, I believe. It's called Billion, How I Became King of the Thrill Pill Cult. People can get it on Amazon. And the book talks about this journey that I went through as a 15-year-old kid. At some stage, the mob got involved, the Japanese mafia trying to take over my company. We had governmental interference. We had crazy times where I had employees stealing millions and millions of dollars worth of products, run-ins with local gangs and local drug dealers. We went on tour with Lollapalooza, with Red Hot Chili Peppers, I believe Beastie Boys, and Porno for Pyros. We were huge in the electronic music scene at the time. And the company just exploded and did really, really well. It was one of the biggest supplement companies of its era, being run by a kid without even a high school education.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't know you. I hadn't heard of you honestly until a couple weeks ago, but I certainly was familiar with herbal ecstasy and probably many more of your products over the years. I've dabbled in herbal blends and supplements myself, so probably you've inspired me without me even knowing it was you inspiring me in your products over the years. I wonder, so I understand the motivation of wanting to avoid the rat race. I think most of us can relate to that. But now what keeps you going? Because I know you are in a much different place now, and yet still involved in life enhancing, bettering yourself type of herbal supplements, if I'm not mistaken.
No, that's a great question, Gabby. And let me first say that what you just said to me, I find probably the most inspiring and the most motivating when I can see that I've made an impact on somebody else, or I've inspired somebody else to do something, to make an impact, to make a change, to motivate them. That's really probably one of the best things that somebody could tell me. And similarly, when I walk into a store and I see somebody picking up a product that I've created and buying that product and using it to some way enhance their life, similarly, that gives me great satisfaction. So thank you for bringing that up. A while after the herbal ecstasy thing, I decided to tackle vaping and vaporization. I decided that smoking was really outdated. People have been smoking for thousands of years. And I went off to patent this amazing device and developed most of the technology for digital vaporization. And digital vaporization at the time basically didn't exist. There was no e-cigs, no vapes, and it all came out of the technology that I built during those days. From there, I went off, that company went public sometime around 2007. I exited around 2006. And I went off to create a brain pill, a nootropic. I was really excited about the possibility of creating a pill that could enhance mental capabilities and really make you just a little bit sharper. Like if I could get 1% sharper every day, it would be amazing. Mm-hmm. So I spent some time, I worked with one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world on this, and we developed this product called Accelerol. I patented it. It's available on Amazon if anybody wants it. There's Accelerol, and then we have another one called Accelerol Focus Plus. Both are excellent. But in those days, we didn't really have a way to sell it. And these were the old days where you could actually get Jeff Bezos on the phone if you wanted to. Jeff Bezos would return your emails. You'd email jeff@amazon.com and you would get a reply. He would respond to all emails directly. What an amazing, dedicated human being to do that. Mm-hmm. We heard through the grapevine that Bezos was opening up his platform, Amazon, to more than just books. He was going to open it up to anybody like you or me to sell any third-party product that we wanted to on there. And they would take a little commission, but they would let anybody sell anything they want. And I thought, what a great opportunity. Let me list these pills. I'm not going to think much about it. It took me about 15 minutes. I listed them on the platform. I went to sleep. I woke up in the morning. And now, mind you, in those days, the supplement was $120. Now you can get it for about $40. But back then, it was about $120 a bottle or a box. Mm-hmm. And we had thousands of orders when I woke up the next morning. And I thought to myself, hold your horses. There's something going on here. And I researched Bezos a little bit more. I learned that Jeff Bezos came from D.H. Hutton, was very experienced, very shrewd businessman, one of the smartest guys in the room, always a Wall Street player, learned how to take inexpensive money from Wall Street and put it into Silicon Valley and to grow a company that in those days, I believed was going to be one of the most powerful e-commerce companies ever. And I don't think I was wrong. Mm-hmm. So I decided to stop everything that I was doing and put all my eggs in the Amazon basket and bet on Bezos, which is what I did. And I learned how to sell things on Amazon, how to become a master on the Amazon platform, how to master their algorithm, how to speak their language, how do you influence consumers and get them to buy your product instead of the other thousands and thousands that were surely going to show up on that platform. And we did that very successfully. Then big Fortune 500s, Fortune 50 companies started coming to us, asking us to do the same for them. But then there was the average person like yourself or me or other people who came to us and said, Shaahin, we really got this great idea for an Amazon product, or we want to sell on Amazon. We don't know what product to sell. Can you teach us? And they said, well, we're pretty expensive as far as an agency goes. And they said, well, we won't be able to afford that. So we developed a course, and that course is what now is Amazon Mastering. What drives me the most, to your credit, to your point, is we teach this course where we tell people how to sell on Amazon, how to start an Amazon business, start from A to Z, everything from how to incorporate your business for little or no money, how to pick a product for little or no money, how to get that product made, how to get VAs to run your company so you don't have to quit your day job just yet until you start making some money. And with your permission, Gabby, we have a 1-hour crash course. It's normally $200 to anybody who's listening to your show. I'd like to offer that for free as my way of saying thank you and my contribution. And anybody that's interested, you can reach out to me on fbasellercourse.com or ShaahinCheyenne.com. Just mention you saw it on Gabby's show, and I will give you the 1-hour course absolutely free, no obligation. If I can start you on your Amazon journey, I'm super psyched to do that and to help empower you to create recurring revenue streams, because that's what all this is about, in ways where you can stop selling your hours for money, because ultimately that's what we all want to get to.
Yeah, well, awesome. Thank you. And I'm definitely going to be checking that out. It's I think it's already queued up in my to-do list for this week. So I'm looking forward to that. Thank you. And I will repeat those details in the description for people in case you didn't catch that. Something that I run into often in my personal life and in the everyday people that I interact with is what I often call poverty mindset, that limited kind of thinking that keeps us from believing that we can. And I know from your story that you had some key mentors that really helped you move through what might have been that for you. I don't know if maybe you were just, you may have just been born with a little extra go-get-itness, and toughness from your upbringing. I know also you endured some toughening things early on, but I wonder if you have any thoughts about whether you think it's harder or easier to find a mentor, and how you might advise, a 15-year-old today to go about finding a mentor to help navigate the life that they want to create.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's super important. Like with our course, we offer coaching, mentorship, and more importantly, we offer a mastermind, which I think now is a great way of finding mentorship in a group. So a lot of people can't find mentors, they have difficulty doing it, they don't know where to start. And a great thing to do is to start a mastermind. All you got to do is get 3 like-minded people together, and you agree to meet once a week. And you create an agenda, and you guys just meet once a week, no matter what, for an hour, each going through processing issues that you need help on. And through that, a lot of people have found mentors. For me, it was really interesting because, like I said, when I left school and left home, I was hanging out in the computer lab, and I managed to, just at a community college, which I was no longer enrolled in because I didn't have the money to enroll. I was eating ketchup and relish from the hot dog stands because they gave that for free. I managed to live off that for a period of time. And I met this guy who became a friend and a mentor to me. His name was Edward Lawson. He was known as the California Walkman. As it turned out, he was a major figure in civil rights. Growing up in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, he managed to sue the San Diego Police Department for pulling him over just because he was Black. And he took it all the way to the Supreme Court by himself.
Wow.
As a single Black man, and won and beat an entire police department. And he did this over and over again. So there's actual Supreme Court cases based on just this one guy. But the amazing thing about Ed was that when you were around him, when you were around what Steve Jobs would call his reality distortion field, when you were around this guy, impossible was not a word. There was nothing that you could not do. His energy, his influence, just his personhood who he was and what he brought to the world was so authentic that just being around this person shifted your consciousness. And for me, that's what happened. I was a 15-year-old kid. I was rebellious to no end. I was defiant to no end. And I had no idea what I was going to do. And I had no idea how to operate in the world around me. It was an alien landscape. And finding this mentor really opened me up. It opened my eyes and showed me how I could get into this world and not only survive, but thrive. And I write about that again in my book, Billion, How I Became King of the Thrill Pill Cult. If anybody wants, actually, the first chapter is free on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, anywhere podcasts are found. So you can listen to the first chapter for free if anybody wants to. And the audiobook will be on Audible, I think, in the next couple of weeks, as soon as they figure out how to get that out.
It's a really great story. I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Thanks, Gabby. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, does your 15-year-old self have some advice? If you think back to your 15-year-old self from back then, I know that's kind of a weird question, but I have so many young people in my life that I'm trying to figure out how to overcome that mindset bit of it. And it seems like it's easy from, an adult self to say, well, just make adult decisions. But I don't know. You can think if there's a piece of advice that your 15-year-old self might say to a 15-year-old today.
Well, my 15-year-old self probably would not be the best person to take it.
Right.
My 15-year-old self was fearless. My 15-year-old self was relentless. And my 15-year-old self made a lot of bad effing decisions. Yeah. But I could tell you what I would tell my 15-year-old self now.
Yeah, that's probably better, because mine too was not good decisions.
Yeah, I think that now, looking back, I would tell myself, or tell any 15-year-old, that you should model yourself after other people who are successful. And you should spend more time, as much time as you can, around those who are where you want to be. And that may entail you going through some periods of discomfort. You might have to work for free. You might have to work for cheap. You might have to work. I know it's hard. You're watching Instagram and you're seeing the people with their crazy lifestyles and their beautiful vacations and, these beautiful bodies on the beach and all the Lamborghinis and all the stuff that they're pitching. You got to understand that those friggin' people are professionals and they do that as a career, and that may not be the correct path to success and wealth. A better path may be to think foundational. And thinking foundational is so important that now I've made it the cornerstones of the course that we teach, Amazon Mastery, that we were talking about, in that, you got a table with 4 legs, pretty stable. 3 legs, table can still stand, it's okay. 2 legs, not a very good table. 1 leg, we're getting into tripod territory. You want to have solid foundations in your life. One of those foundations can, at least starting out, be your career or your job, until you no longer have to sell your hours. If you have a trust fund or a rich daddy, then great. I always wished I had a rich daddy. It never worked out that way. I see people like that, and I'm like, dude, you so have it made. That must be so glorious that you never have to worry about money. But
it often doesn't seem to work out, though. Just as an aside, I think sometimes they miss that work ethic, which you have exemplified really spectacularly.
You can't buy ethics. You can't buy work ethic. You can't buy morals. You can't buy grit. But one thing I will tell you, that it is a lot more fun to be rich than it is to be poor. And it is a lot easier to be rich than to be poor. So the second pillar of our foundation, I tell people, is get into real estate, learn about real estate, and as soon as you can, buy some real estate. You're like, well, where I'm living, it's too expensive. There is somewhere where you will be able to get involved in real estate at some point in your life. You might have to make a sacrifice. You might have to give up that $5 a day latte. You might have to quit smoking, stop drinking, take the bus to work, whatever the case may be. You may have to sacrifice, and that's okay. But you want to get on the real estate train in one way or another, and you don't need money to do it. You could do it with other people's money. There's entire courses that are taught on that, and I teach some very basics of how to do that. But you want to get involved in real estate. The third thing is you want to have something that's giving you compounded interest. Invest in the market, some kind of crypto if you know about that stuff. I don't preach crypto or know about
I'm learning.
Learning, that's okay. Anything that's going to give you compounded interest. That's how Warren Buffett's richest man in the world, or one of the wealthiest men in the world. I think it's Bezos now, but at some stage Buffett was, and he goes back and forth. But because he's been investing longer than anybody else. It's that one reason, compounded interest over time. He's a genius because of that. And the fourth pillar that I believe that everybody should have is invest in an e-commerce business. Real estate right now is at the highest point it's ever been. I don't know if when you're listening to this podcast, if it's still going to be the case, but presumably not a great time to get involved in purchasing real estate. There's other ways to make money, and there's people who make money doing Airbnb and all kinds of other things with real estate. But it's not a great time to buy real estate in this exact specific moment because the market is at an all-time high and the prices are inflated without reason. It's hard to get into cash flow for those reasons. But you can buy another kind of real estate. You can start another kind of real estate that requires no real property at all. You can start an e-commerce business on the biggest piece of real estate on the planet, on the Amazon platform. And you can do that for little or no money. Like I said, I'll share the course with you for free and start building recurring, predictable revenue month after month. You find a product, you sell that product, you step that system and you repeat it. Step and repeat, step and repeat. Now you've got a really nice 4-pillar foundation. You've got a career, keeps the kid in diapers, a job, that'll keep food on the table. You've got some money in real estate. Somehow you figured out how to get some money involved in there. You've got some money in the markets. And then you've got this business that's your 4th pillar that is growing, that's developing for you, recurring, predictable revenue month after month, year after year. You're going to be really comfortable and you're going to be able to do what I do, which is really, I think, the best life. I always say time is the new luxury. If you have a ton of money and you don't control your own time, and I know people like this who have a lot of money and you look at their calendar and you're like, oh, holy smokes, like you got none of your own time. But if you could live like I do, I travel with my family, a happily married, beautiful wife, great kid, and we travel all over the world. While we're traveling, we're making money. People are buying products on Amazon. People are buying our products on Amazon. At night when we sleep, when we wake up and we're on this nice little beach village in Thailand, some guy's bringing us coconut and we've got a chef that's making our food and the boat's waiting outside to take us to some island. Somebody's buying our products on Amazon and we're making money. I've got my predictable recurring revenue from compounding interest. I've got my real estate investments. And of course, I've got my course, which is my 4th pillar, where I teach people how to do what I do and try to impact and inspire other people to create these businesses so they don't have to sell their hours. And I think at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, creating this well-rounded human, this well-rounded finances. And then similarly with your health, you want to have those 4 pillars: exercise, diet, sleep. You got to think of whatever the 4th pillar is. I forgot as I was saying it, but you want to have that kind of foundational thinking anywhere in life where you're at.
I want to say relationships, but I always tend to forget that 4th pillar as well. I'm not sure which one we're using, but it strikes me how important. Personally, I think I probably have a lot of similar motivations, but I didn't set up as good of a foundation. As you know, I mean, probably many of us didn't set it up quite as good as you did early on, but I guess I just want to reiterate that for the young people in my life, that those beginning years, really taking the time to to set up your health. I can look back at the 90s when you were creating herbal ecstasy. I was exploring ecstasy and smoking things while you were creating alternatives. So there's probably a correlation there in the end results, as far as stability of a life. So, and at the same time, it's never too late. At 50, I feel like I'm on a good trajectory for incorporating more stability in my life. So
Yeah, well, you're looking great. You're smiling. It seems like your life is happy. Carry on.
thank you. Yeah, and thanks to people like you, I guess I also feel compelled to reiterate, because I think that poverty mindset often leads to a narrative that I hear repeated among people suffering with it, which is that people with money are coming from aren't motivated to do good, or aren't good people, or there's this kind of underlying falsehood that they hang on to justify not becoming successful, it seems like. And so I love your story and people like you who have a genuine desire to help other people. And I like to reiterate that point of, like, you're able to help so many more people have such a healthier, happier lives by having that solid foundation for yourself.
Yeah, it totally sucks to be poor. I can attest to that.
It's expensive. I can attest to.
Yeah, this is the most expensive country in the world to be poor. I mean, I tell people all the time, you can't afford to be poor in America. It's the poor pay more for everything. I make that example oftentimes. We have a place up on the East Coast in New York. And when we go down to Manhattan, you go into the stores, you have the best produce. You walk in, you get an apple, and it's, whatever it is for an apple, say $1, and you get this beautiful red, shiny, organic apple waxed handed to you, great. And then you go down a little bit into some parts of Brooklyn, which are now been super gentrified, and you walk in and you get that same apple, you're paying $1.10, $1.15, and that apple's like a few days old, it's a little bit browned, it's a little bit bruised, so you're paying more. Similarly, the wealthy people I know, the really wealthy people I know, they don't really pay for very much. They go out to eat, someone's taking them to lunch. People love having those people around. They want to go on a trip, someone's paying for the trip. They want some new gadget or device or something, that company's sending it to them. The wealthy and the famous rarely pay for things like that. Occasionally they do, but not really. Those things are provided to them. If not, it's a tax write-off. It's the poor people who end up paying the most for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's the crazy thing in this country.
Interest rates. I mean, don't get me started, but you mentioned real estate and investment, and coming into that with a good credit rating and some money is going to get you a way better deal than coming into it. And not that it's impossible to come, into it from the bottom. I have to remind myself, but it is expensive to be broke. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't want to be there. And it's funny. It's an interesting thing. We did a little bit of an experiment. My mom, we say that she's a great sailor. Not because she likes anything aquatic, but she loves a good deal. So she loves to go to these estate sales and garage sales. So we call her a sailor. It's a little bit of an inside joke. And I, for a period of time, started going, I have a pretty extensive car collection. I collect vintage Porsches and Ferraris and a lot of exotics. And at one time I had a car collection worth, well in the high seven figures. And I remember I would go to the sales with my mom occasionally, and I would pull up with a car that maybe didn't look that fancy. It was like a little bit of I had a few cars that were a little bit raggedy, although they were valuable. Most people wouldn't know. And when I would ask the price of things, it would always be higher than when I would show up in a Porsche or a fancier car. And it just goes to speak to your point that people, you would think it's the other way around. People go, oh, that person is poor, that person is broke, I'm going to give them a better deal. It doesn't work that way. The world actually will end up charging you more for being that. But when you are wealthy, when you present as wealthy, when you have that attitude, people want to help you. People want to give you things. People want to give you a better deal. And it's one of those ironies in life, but it's true.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I just took some sandwiches to a couple homeless guys last night, and it was difficult. And it struck me how, and I know you have part of your story was some homelessness, and I've slept under a couple bridges at points in my life. And so I know people just don't like, people find it much easier to treat people. And again, I don't think it's, I'm not trying to cast judgment on that. It's just a fact of the way this world works, and yet another motivator for pulling yourself out of those situations that are going to spiral into those lowest places, because it is really hard to get out, as opposed to you get the momentum of Amazon behind you, and a good a good group. I think your mastermind idea is really a key. Having peers, having other people that you can help inspire you and motivate you, and give you examples, of failure and success is really an important part of the whole equation.
Yeah, all about mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have one little last question, but before we get there, I just want to ask you if there's something else that you want to share or talk about today.
No, not really. We've got a podcast. If anyone's interested, it's called Hack and Grow Rich. I think you've listened to it.
I have, yeah.
So if anybody's interested, make sure to like and subscribe. You can check us out anywhere podcasts are found. It's the Hack and Grow Rich podcast. And you can also get us on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Additionally, again, anybody that's interested, I've got that 1-hour course. Get it. I'm giving it away for free to all of Gabby's listeners to see if I can empower you guys to start an Amazon business gaining recurring revenue. And if that's the kind of thing that you want to do, reach out to me on ShaahinCheyenne.com. I'll give you my direct email. I answer every email directly. It's darkzess@gmail.com. Send me an email. I'll get you on calendar, and we'll get you going with the free course and see if I can inspire you to make some predictable recurring revenue.
Awesome. That's a great offer. I encourage everyone to take advantage of that. I will be taking advantage of that. I have a little fun 3 wishes question, which I would like to pose to you, which is if you had 3 magic acorns that would grow into limitless wishes, and one of them would mature like in the next week or so, almost immediately. One of them would mature in the next 1 to 5 years, and one of them would not mature till after you're dead and gone, but might serve humanity or this earth. What would your 3 wish what would you plant in your wish acorns?
Oh, I love that. That's a great question. My kid immediately would be telling me, I hear his voice, Dad, you can't wish for more wishes.
Right. Yeah, you could try, but it usually backfires. We all heard the story.
That's one of those rules. Okay, so I would say wish number, so they can be wishes for whatever I want?
Yeah, you're exactly. Just one matures quickly, and one matures a little bit down the road, and then one you don't get to experience the benefit, but it's gonna mature later.
I'd love to have a time machine to go back into time and to learn all the wisdom of times past and times ahead of us. I think that would be phenomenal. So that would be my first wish. So that's the one that matures right away, right? Okay.
Yeah. And tomorrow you wake up with that knowledge. Be nice.
That'd be great. Or with the time machine, that would be super fun. The second one, I guess, would be for a lifetime of health for me, my friends, and my family, and people that I'm around. I think that would be another wonderful gift, right? To be free from pain and suffering and have radiant health. That's a great one. And then for the future, I would wish that for my family, my son, and for all our friends and family. Wish them to have great health in life. I think that's critical.
Nice. That's beautiful. I know health seems to be an underlying theme of your work, even though you don't seem to say it directly very often, which is interesting to me. And your avenue, I'm just speaking off the cuff here, but your avenue of coming to that work through raves and through people who were indulging in drugs, which I would just put an asterisk, isn't necessarily as unhealthy at times as some people sum it up to be, but nonetheless isn't the healthiest behavior that humans can engage in. So how has health become such a key ingredient in your thinking?
At a certain stage, you begin to realize that once this body is not functioning, everything else stops. You can't be a productive human. You can't make an impact on the world if your physical body that is bringing that forth into the world isn't functioning well. So you want to make sure that if you want to be the most impactful and the most effective, that your body is the most effective. And that's not that hard. Like I said, it's foundational. You want to make sure you're eating well, you're getting enough sleep, super important. You don't have too much stress, and that you're exercising. And you're doing that to the point of discomfort where you are seeking that point of exhaustion. And if you do that on a regular basis, you're giving yourself the best possible chance. And I think it's like that with everything in business and life. You systemize and you take action.
Excellent. Yeah, well, that seems like a good place to end. I want to just thank you again for coming on the podcast with me, for sharing your story, and the synchronicity of you coming into my realm will continue to reverberate throughout. So, and I look forward to checking out your course. I will put the details in the description for people who need to look at those. And I encourage everybody to check out our free course and your other offerings.
Thanks, Gabby. Really appreciate you having me on. Have a great evening. I'm really grateful.
Thank you. You too. You as well. Enjoy.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. That wraps up today's conversation on the Authentic Action podcast. I hope that you enjoyed that conversation with Shaahin as much as I did, and I do hope that you will take him up on his offer for that introductory Amazon Mastery course. I know I'm going to check it out, and I would love to compare notes with you if you want to. Also, I will remind you to check out our sponsor, Sleeping Dragons Company, on Etsy or via sleepingdragonsco.com. You can also find a link to that and many, many other things that I'm into on my own website, gallilly.com. That's GALLILLY.com. Also, check out the Action School online, where we have a growing number of courses and workshops, and we'd love to have you join us for some of those. Again, I thank you for stopping by. I wish you a fantastic day. Until next time, keep it real. Ciao for now.